Hi, I'm Diane, your host of Epic Conversations. And today, our guest again is Ken Davis. He's teaching us all about the U.S. Constitution, and he also teaches a course at Church for All Nations on Saturdays. Ken, I am so glad that you are telling us all about the things about the U.S. Constitution that we didn't know.
and can you imagine? I'm so enjoying it.
Oh, God, I know, because this is one of your passions.
Yes, absolutely.
But we talked about in previous sessions about this, the picture and how it was Congress praying in 1774, and how the United States has one Constitution,
Correct.
and we've had it since the 1700s. But tell me, there are other countries that they just spitting them out and going through.
That's a great way of phrasing it. Yeah, so our Constitution came to be in 1789, and since 1789, France has had 15 different constitutions.
15. Okay.
Since 1789, well, it goes just a little bit later than that. Poland has had 31. 31 constitutions, 31 different constitutions, and in that same period of time, they've had, I think it's about 7 revolutions.
Oh.
Right? So we are unique.
Yes,
as a nation.
Unique. We're blessed.
Yes, absolutely.
In this country, because our Constitution was founded by praying men, founded by biblical, principles, and that God was our supreme being. So that may be one reason why it has been unshakable up to this point. So we're going to be facing a lot of different things coming up in the elections, a lot of choices that we need to make. But this session, we're going to talk about Article number 3 of the U.S. Constitution, which is the judicial power of the United States vested in the Supreme Court. Now, the Supreme Court's made some unique decisions over the years.
Great. I love that you use the word decisions.
Yeah.
They can render opinions, but those opinions don't necessarily mean they are law.
Oh.
And there's a lot of misconceptions of what the judiciary can do.
Okay, what do you mean?
Well, so I'll deal with this first off top. The first thing is, a lot of people believe that federal judges are put in place for life.
I thought that too.
Yeah, you're not alone.
Okay.
Truly, there are probably most Americans, and if you're ever on Facebook and some of these other things, you find out there's a lot of people that believe things like that the judiciary is put in place. Those judges are put in place for life. Well, they are not. Now,
okay.
I would say that based on what the Constitution says about federal judges and Supreme Court judges, is rather nebulous in how they are limited in as far as how long they can serve on the courts.
Okay.
It's rather nebulous, and I'd be absolutely in favor of term limiting judges. But the truth is, they are in place for good behavior. Now,
oh, you're kidding.
Now, there are things today that we wouldn't see as bad behavior or poor behavior that over the last 200 plus years has been considered poor or bad behavior.
Okay, let's have an example of this.
Public drunkenness.
Oh, okay.
So we've had federal judges removed, impeached for public drunkenness.
In the past.
What about improper language? So use of foul language. We've had federal judges removed and impeached for improper language. Now today,
I was going to say,
we'd be okay with our judges walking around, sloppy drunk, stumbling through the streets, maybe.
my God.
But the truth is, we could remove high-handedness. Now that one, there's probably some judges right now we should be removing for high-handedness. But we've had federal judges removed from the bench for high-handedness.
What do you mean by that, high-handedness?
I am the arbiter of the law, and I will decide what's going to happen in this court, not a jury.
Oh, so they override the jury,
or
or don't have a jury.
hush a defendant, a judge, or I'm sorry, a lawyer, while in court. I mean, there's things that they considered high-handedness. Again, today we would, because we don't know that they shouldn't be doing these things, we would be okay with. And so that's the first thing.
Now, the Supreme Court, they made some unique decisions in 1962 about taking prayer out of schools, right?
Opinions, but yes. Remember, and I would ask that anyone that's viewing this, anytime you hear something come from the Supreme Court, it's an opinion.
It's an opinion.
It's an opinion.
Google, when you Google, says decision. What's the difference? I mean, obviously you can think of, but what is the legal difference?
So when we accept it as a decision, it's final.
Okay.
When we recognize that it's an opinion, then we also recognize that these other two branches of government have ultimate say-so. So, for instance, you mentioned agreeing that prayer should be taken out of schools, or even, let's say, removing God from the Pledge of Allegiance, right? Which is one that has come up, and the Supreme Court recognizing they don't have authority, they are outside their bounds in some cases, and Congress recognizing that the Supreme Court can't give a decision, can't give an opinion that must become law.
They can't.
No, because they are not the legislature.
That's right.
They are not the legislative
They're
branch.
the judicial branch, which is separate than the legislative branch.
So a great example, let's say that there's a law that Congress has put forth, and the president maybe agrees that the law should become law. And then the judiciary comes back and says, okay, but that law is not necessarily constitutional. And here's why. Now, both Congress and president can say, it's a great opinion, we're going to pass this law anyway. Or they can consider what the Supreme Court has said concerning it, maybe make some changes, tweak the bill, tweak the law tweak the bill before it becomes law. So
Congress can do that.
Yes, absolutely.
That's right.
They are the legislature. And that would be a proper boundary or use of their authority. But for them to, let's again, since we are talking to a lot of believers, what a lot of people believe was the passage of same-sex marriage in this country.
Okay, right.
Right, which came from the Supreme Court. Supreme Court says, no, it is lawful for same-sex couples to marry. That's a fantastic opinion.
It's an opinion.
But unless Congress passes a law that says same-sex marriage. So when that happened, I had a ton of people texting me, hey, can they do this? No, they don't make a law. And unfortunately, today, because we don't know, Congress will not push back because they don't want to look bad in the public, right? And we don't know, and therefore we accept it as law, even though it is not.
It's not even a law. What about the Congress? What about that took prayer out of school?
So again, if the Supreme Court had said it is lawful to remove prayer from schools, Congress absolutely could have said, again, that's a great opinion, but we don't believe that is proper, nor will we remove prayer from schools, nor will we pass a law that says schools, this whole belief that there's supposed to be a separation of church and state, right? Ask anyone who brings up separation of church and state, ask them, show me in the Constitution where it is. Show me in the Declaration where it is. I've yet to have anyone show me. Guess why?
Because it's not there.
Because it's not there. There's no such thing as separation. And what it is, it's people have taken out of context a letter that Thomas Jefferson wrote to a church.
Mm-hmm.
And in that letter, what he was saying, in context, reading all of it, what he was saying was, don't worry about how you worship, because there's a high and impregnable wall between church and state. And what he was saying was the state cannot, based on the First Amendment, encroach upon your worship.
The opposite of what
was the
people
opposite.
thought. It's really for protecting the church.
Yeah, and
from the
even
state controlling.
yeah, and even if you believe that that's what Thomas Jefferson was saying, that's fantastic. Except for he had no part in writing the Constitution. Wasn't even in the country when it was passed. Wasn't even there. And so Thomas Jefferson's is not the head or the brain that we should be cracking open to understand the Constitution, because it wasn't there.
That's something. Well, how about the other decision in 1973, Roe versus Wade? That's another, not law, it's an opinion.
Well, now that was an opinion, but there was a law attached that Congress passed, and there's a groundswell, if you will, to overturn Roe v. Wade. Part of the reason that President Trump is in the Oval Office right now is because he talked about and he campaigned on eliminating Roe v. Wade. There are a lot of Americans that believe should not be the law of the land, and including, by the way, the young lady who's part of Roe v. Wade. She's not young anymore, but she birthed her children, even though she was part of that Supreme Court suit. She actually ended up having her children. She's very outspoken against abortion.
How do you like that? There's so much that I believe the American people they don't know. And it really comes down to, it's just ignorance.
Yes.
And it's like, if they're not teaching it in the public schools and they're not teaching it in the pulpits like they used to do in the 1800s, how are people going to know? I mean, I remember a little bit when I was in grade school. As you were talking, I remember the Judicial Branch versus the Legislative Branch, and the reason why they were two separate was for a check and balance. And it's like, but that's about all I remember. But this is just sparking a whole bunch of interest that we as the people need to get more involved in understanding what we're voting for and to why we're voting and what are our values and how are we going to see our lives going forward in this country. This is critical.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing all this. This is awesome. Thank you for joining us. And please subscribe to this channel. Share it with a friend. And till we see you next time, in the meantime, have an epic day in the Lord.